So I wanted to let you know that you really inspired me, by the way, because the other day when I went on my hike on Sunday when we were going to go on a hike and I went alone and I just kind of recorded that thing. I don't know. I just got like really honest with myself and like recorded it, and I haven't done it yet, but I like really want to post it and just kind of embrace that vulnerability like we were talking
You should,
about.
dude. I'm here for it. I'll listen to it. I'll be your cheerleader, bro.
Perfect. I'll send it to you because I know you won't ridicule me. It was crazy because as soon as I made it, I like listened back to it, and I was like, I should just post it right now. Just do it. And then I just stopped myself. I'm like, what if everyone makes fun of me? It's like, oh shit. I'm not embracing my vulnerability.
Good for you for recording, though, man.
Yeah.
You showed up to the table and you did it.
Yeah.
And you have it,
I do have
and you can still post it.
Yes. So I'm actually editing it so that it has subtitles, because I started like crying a lot in it, and so you can barely hear what I'm even fucking saying.
Fuck yeah, dude. Good for you, man. Hell yeah. I'm really excited to hear that. I'm really excited that you want to do podcasts with your other friends, too.
Yeah, man.
That's sick as shit, dude.
I feel like my whole life, or not my whole life, but like whenever I have these, ideas or just fake debates in my head, I'm like, man, you gotta actually talk to people. You gotta get input. You gotta see where your ideas are wrong and kind of fix them.
Yeah.
There's that book Fahrenheit 451 where I can't remember the exact quote, but he was talking about how it's better to share my ignorance and get beat from it than to hold my ignorance forever,
Can preach.
Yeah, so I feel like I just like really internalized that and tried to start talking to people, and I think in a podcast form where I can actually listen back to it, how it actually is, rather than just like replaying the moments that made me look good in my head and then remembering the moments that made them look bad in my head. It'll sort of be more objective and help me learn a lot more, I think.
I agree. It's been kind of nice listening back to just recordings of myself, and I realized I want to change my speech.
Oh, yeah.
I like a lot.
I do too. It's hard not to.
It is very difficult not to, isn't it?
It's really a filler word, and now I'm thinking about the word like too much.
Yeah.
But, and then like little ums and uhs and stuff like that.
Yes.
But I think the main thing that I was worried about the first time I recorded is just that, like, I wouldn't be coherent. Like, I wouldn't be saying stuff that was actually working together and making sense. But I think the fact that we were talking together and, like, you could give me feedback when it made sense, or if you're like, wait, that doesn't make sense. It's so helpful so that I'm actually carrying on a decent conversation.
Same.
That's been something interesting to learn. Just, I don't know, like Joe Rogan talks about it all the time, about how conversation is like a skill that you just need to, you really have to practice it.
It's so true.
And grow it.
Yes. The more that I've been communicating with people, the better I feel that I've become with speech.
Oh, yeah.
But I still have so much to learn.
Oh, yeah. And, like, there's always things to learn, obviously, but it really, I don't know, whenever there's people that are, I know people who are just like, oh, I just can't talk to people. I can't really communicate well, and so I just won't do it. It's like, well, you gotta do it in order to learn, right?
Yeah, for real. Everything starts out in infancy. A lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah, for real.
They're so afraid to appear, like, incompetent. It's like, bro, everyone in history was incompetent at one point in their life.
Yeah.
They build a skill. Mozart. Motherfucker was incompetent at one point at the piano, right?
Like, yeah, he didn't plop out of his mom's vagina and able to play
exactly.
Piano, right?
Yes.
Granted, he had more talent than anybody else, but he tapped into it and then continued working at it, right?
Yes. It's all about developing a relationship with the process.
Hell yeah. I've actually been wanting to pick your brain more about sort of the nature of God. I kept listening back to that part, and I felt like I really didn't grasp what you were trying to say, and maybe like we were just having like sometimes it felt like a different conversation.
Okay.
But I feel like I've been replaying a lot of what you said in my head, especially with like that hike on Sunday, where I was just like feeling so much emotion. And it was really cool because at one point I just kind of like stopped, like looked all around me, and I was like, holy shit, like this is God. Like this is everything.
Hell yeah.
And like that kind of, we are kind of when you said like we're reflections of the all, or we are manifestations of the all. I don't know. It was cool to really feel that. But I think what I've been noticing lately is how that idea can actually be kind of scary for people to like think that they're losing their individuality.
Yeah. And like individuality is like subjective, right?
Yeah.
It's like our whole identity is subjective.
Mm-hmm.
And we live in a world where like drama is intertwined in like the fabric of reality, because when we tell accounts of experience through stories,
Yeah, we have to. Right?
we have to. And so like it would make sense. It's easier for us to comprehend past situations when we use it from subjective, kind of like dramatic terms.
Yeah.
And drama meaning stories. And so I think it's just how we process what has happened to us in a sense. Because when we describe our experience, it's through linear time.
Yeah.
And so like when you're describing a past experience of like learning to ride a bike or something, it was you, right? Like you did that. You were the one that gained the skill to ride the bike. And so like I think it's just how we process information. And for humans, we want things to be known. We're computers, and we want to solve puzzles. And it's easier for us to solve puzzles when we categorize things within the known. And so it's easier for us to like, I guess, handle the fact that we're alive if we can put ourselves into a framework of like, this is who I am.
Yeah.
This is what has happened to me. But when you realize that like all of those thoughts, because like our thoughts, we can't control, they're just happenings. So just like the voices in your head, those voices aren't you. Like you identify with those voices and like you take
because they're happening to me and I'm the one experiencing them.
Exactly. However, like those voices that you hear in your head, you have just as much control over that as you do hearing a bird like fucking like sing a song, right? Like the same way the bird sings the song is the same way that you have voices in your head.
Yeah.
You don't identify with the bird singing the song, right? Like that's not you. But you identify with those voices in your head because it's like it like kind of makes sense, right? Like it's not like something external, it's internal. And so you're like, well, this is me because it's internal. Yeah. However, it's like it's not. Like it's just a happening.
That's so why I like that description of it, because the way that we do actually control those thoughts is when we decide to identify with them and ruminate on them, right?
Yes.
Yeah, when we start to continually narrowizing them and making them a part of our identity. It's so wild.
But when you realize that like your identity doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And the only thing that's actually here is like just the physical space, right? Like
yeah.
Our thoughts are real in a sense, but our thoughts aren't like physical reality. Like the only thing that actually exists is physical reality. Mm-hmm. But like how we comprehend physical reality is through a subjective interpretation of that. Yeah. Because now we're like, well, this is where I'm at. And I have to be, and like when I say reflections of the all, like I think everything is happening all at once, like the all. Mm-hmm. Everything that could possibly ever happen is happening. Yeah. And like, so like,
we're just experiencing the collapse of linear time. based around our experience.
In a sense. So like John describes like God, and there's like a lot of like literature based upon this of like God is infinite energy, infinite light.
Mm-hmm.
And because God can experience whatever he wants to experience, he refracts himself to give contrast. And then he is every single living thing and non-living thing all simultaneously just because he wanted to create experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so like we're all just reflections of that subjective reflection of the all,
Yes.
of like this infinite energy, this infinite potential. And like when we die, I think we just go back into that void. And like you hear in like church, like when you're in heaven, you knew everything, right? Like you were part of it, and then you came down here as a baby, and you had to forget that because this is a test, right?
Yeah.
And then like how's it going? And then you do what you need to do. You like be kind and you follow like the stories of the scriptures, and like yeah, you live life, and then you go back to like that infinite creative everything.
The only problem is they think that the prior experience and the post experience are still encapsulated in an individual consciousness.
Yes.
And I think that's where I get like, I don't know, it's kind of funny because whenever I talk to someone who's religious, and obviously in our case we mostly deal with LDS people, I feel like if you kind of describe that there is a oneness to existence and that really in essentially everything is one, that we are not really separate, we can't really be essentially separate from anything, most people I talk to are like, well, yeah, of course. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And it's like, then why do you believe that you have like a hierarchical relationship to God in the sense that you are essentially separate from God? Like, because I think if you know that all of existence has to happen within a shared space, a oneness, and that the God that most people conceive of would have to be in that space, you have to question what's outside of that. Because, like, God can't exist outside of existence, right? God is existence.
Yeah.
And so once we realize that we're all existing, you kind of have to conclude we're all God, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
In a sense, yeah. And I think like all is everything too. Like it's also non-existence.
Yeah.
So like it's that space as well because like there has to be duality in things for things to even be comprehended. Because like Alan Watts talks about this. He's like, you can't have a wave without it being a full wave. Like,
Yeah, you have to have the trough and the
so,
crest, right?
yeah, so like even with existence, that is just another side of the wave. So in that sense, like non-existence also has to be a part of that.
I think one of the things that I tend to ruminate on, though, is I'm wondering if non-existence is actually a thing. In the sense that, like, maybe something doesn't exist to me, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So, I
Yeah.
guess where I kind of try to pull this from is, like, if I said, wow, how do I phrase this? Have you ever heard of consciousness being described as, like, the space as opposed to the forms within that space?
Consciousness being a space.
Yes, consciousness being a space. It's kind of
Kind of like the ethereal realm or some shit.
possibly one of the ways I've heard it explained is they're like, imagine a room. Now describe that room. Most people who describe or everybody who describes the room have to describe it based on the contents within that room. It's got the walls, it's got the chairs, the tables, and all that stuff. And it's like, well, then what is the space that room exists in? And some people say that consciousness is the space. That we are simply consciousness experiencing, perceiving form within that space. Yeah. And so what that kind of forced me to think and kind of fucked with me is like, okay, then what is that consciousness existing in? But I think the whole point is that it isn't existing in anything because it is the whole of existence, and therefore there is no non-existence, or what I would describe as the void.
I could see that. That's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
Because, like, because I said earlier that the only thing that actually exists is the physical self, which, in a sense, is true. Because, like, you're talking about, like, consciousness being a space. You don't measure consciousness as a space through, like, scientific observation.
You can't. It's actually unknowable.
Yeah. Like, you can trace blood flow in the brain to certain areas. In certain areas, when they have certain blood flow, you can kind of conclude sometimes that this is what they're thinking. Because, like, they did this one test where they had, like, 1,000 flashcards. And they showed hundreds of people these 1,000 flashcards. And they studied where the blood flow in the brain was correlated with the flashcard.
Yeah.
And this shit was like 80 to 90% accurate. It's like you'd show someone a red fire truck, show that to 100 people.
It's all
The area in the brain where that blood flow was, it was like this in the same area like 80% of the time. To represent that fire truck.
Yeah. But what I love about that is that, like, they can measure and prove which area of the brain processes fire truck imagery, but they can't measure and explain the feeling, the experience of seeing a red fire truck.
Yeah.
Mostly because, I mean, a lot of those things, the color of a fire truck actually really doesn't exist. It has to be perceived and created within the brain.
And, like, agreed upon.
And agreed upon. Exactly.
That red fire truck, you could have told those 100 people when they were very young, it's colored fucking blue, bro.
Yeah.
And, like, they could have just associated that color with the symbol of blue.
And all agreed upon it.
Yeah.
But me and you who are colorblind, we can't see it.
Yeah, right?
It's completely different to us than it would be for someone else. And I kind of think that there are just, like, stronger agreements that really would be very difficult to disprove, but that essentially all of reality is really just that. It's just like a subjective agreement.
Yeah.
But,
and, like, what if this is like a subjective agreement, right? Like,
yeah,
we chose to pop out here in this universe. My buddy was telling me, he's like, universe, uni one verse song. And, like, it hit me for some reason the other day. I was like, fuck, one song, one all. Like, and, like, maybe this song, maybe there are things, because I was mentioning that, like, drama is intertwined with the fabric of this reality. And so, like, that exists. It has to.
yeah,
But, like, maybe that, where it exists, doesn't have a physical space, like physical reality. But, like, drama's just as real than physical experience. Because, like, we have this ability to, like, reflect on the past and reflect in the future. But, like, and we were talking about this in the last time we were walking, like, we have the ability to create what that means to us. And so, like, it's weird that we can exist in the past, like, play out this drama, and it feels so real.
yeah.
And, like, when you dream, you are experiencing that as well. But you're not physically there. But that experience is still just as real in a sense, even though it's not, you can't measure it in a physical space.
Yeah, and the only reason we don't really think it's real is because we can't measure it in a physical space, and because, I guess that's sort of the prerequisite to measuring in physical space, is that people can't observe it as well. And so they just can't agree with us.
Yeah. Huh. That's so weird.
Yeah.
Because, like, drama does exist. And just the fact that we're talking about these stories, like, means that we both can believe in fiction, even though it's not, like, real here. It is real to us because we can both understand what that means.
Yeah. Kind of like a movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what if that is, like, Who knows?
Well,
What if the drama's different in a different multiverse?
you know
what
it
I mean?
probably is.
What if they follow different rules?
And from that have different agreements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
And like,
if anything that can happen will happen, any possible reality. Like, yeah, it's weird. So it must be all happening in like different this universe and multiple universes, and maybe those other universes have different rules than this universe, but maybe they all follow consistent themes over all of it. But yeah, who knows?
that's something that's so confusing for me, I guess, is like, I feel like the multiverse idea, or the idea that there isn't really just one universe, because there is infinite potentialities, which means there's infinite realities. It makes sense, specifically theoretically, and based on like quantum physics. But then it's like, why isn't this reality, or is this reality all realities at once? Why do we even have a formed reality that is stuck and has to abide by the potential, or the captured potentialities before it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that I think that means that to be able to experience things, you have to be confined through like limitation, because it allows you to maximize the potential of that situation. So like, I'm thinking, I used to play Halo Reach as a kid, and you'd only have 10,000 credits or some shit to build a map in Halo Reach. Like, you weren't capped; it wasn't infinite, and so you had to be really creative with your resources available. And so maybe we need to see progress in our life to have a will to live. So like, if people aren't seeing progress, they lose the will to live.
Yeah.
Whether that be anything, like fucking personal development, like relationship development, work. When people see stagnation is death. And so like, if we're not seeing progress, we lose the will to live, we want to die. And so like, maybe if we wanted to maximize our experience, we'd want to see how far we could potentially get with limited factors. And like, that's what creates like hope and strife and shit like that, you know?
Yeah.
Because if everything was already available to you, like infinite energy, infinite creative potential, right? Like everything happening at once, it kind of takes away from experience. Because like, experience kind of needs to be subjective, right?
Yeah, it does.
And so like, maybe that's why.
That's actually making me think that even right now, there are quite easily infinite data points around me, right? Even down to the last atom in every snowflake on the ground, to the last atom in every rock and tree. There's just all these happenings that are occurring, but I can only process not only what I can visually see, what I can smell, what I can taste, what I can hear, what I can feel, but also like, our brains can really only handle a narrativized version, because in a week I'm gonna have taken so much data and information that in a way is almost limitless, right?
Yeah.
That all I'll really remember of this moment is that I went on a walk with my friend, right?
Yeah.
And it's because that's narrativized, that's my experience. That's what kind of leaves an impression on my consciousness.
And so like, I'm kind of thinking like, we're all reflections of the all. So like, we're this tree, we're these leaves, we're us. But like, we need to have hierarchy. There needs to be a hierarchy in things. Because we need to have aims. We need to be able to focus on certain things, right? Because if all of this,
at least our biology does right now, right?
Yes. So like, if all of this was just as important to us as our physical self, we just fucking stay out here until we're dead, right?
Yeah.
Right. So like,
100% right.
we just stand here and observe and bask in the glory of all of it, and then just die. Like,
and honestly, in my darkest moments, that sounds like utopia to me.
Yeah.
Just like be at peace in nature, like a tree or something. But even a tree is having to distinguish what is nutrients, what helps me grow and sustain.
And they have their own lineage too. Like
Yeah.
trees have they spread their seed, and they'll communicate with each other and send nutrients like through mycelium chains and shit. So they're looking out for what's important to them. It's passing down their line, right?
Yeah.
And so everything, even though it is part of the all, we have our own motivations to stay alive in like this shared space.
Yeah.
Which is weird.
That's so interesting because, like, I don't know, when I was just imagining that right there, for the last like 6 or 7 months, I've been so obsessed with this idea of oneness, of the all, and all of us being God, that I'm like, why are we really trying to do anything other than realize that? Like, we should all just be realizing that we're all the same and that we should all love each other. But I'm seeing now kind of how that stagnation is death. Like, if I really, really, truly believed in that, or I do believe in that, but if I really felt like I needed to act on it, I should just sit here and not do anything, because that is the all, and that is what will happen anyways, right?
Yeah.
And I guess where I was going with that was, I think we need to really be in touch with that concept, that we are all the all, that we are all God. But like you said, we have to adhere to the biological forces that are driving us, and we have to be able to still avoid stagnation to survive, so that we can sort of remain in touch with that oneness. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. I think that you're mentioning that like we need to reflect and understand that like we are a single reflection of all that is happening. So and it's really important, because if you can't get yourself out of your own subjective headspace, you're not willing to cooperate with other living organisms.
Yeah.
You know, if you're like constantly, if like you don't value recycling, that's not in your head. If you were to think, well, I'm just one reflection of the all. So like me disassociating and like, or me not giving a shit about like recycling back nutrients, I affect other living organisms, but then those other living organisms affect myself.
Yeah.
Because like I eat those things.
Yeah.
So right, so like
that's definitely got to be where the disconnect happens. They really are disassociating. We are disassociated when we sort of retreat to our egos and our egoic experience. And like you said, saying that I can recycle, I can treat the earth as some dead resource for me to mine and extract, because it doesn't affect me right now, that I can tell in my egoic experience.
Yes.
And by shifting to a mindset that sees everything as a reflection of the all, will help us better see how our actions are actually coming back and impacting us.
Yes.
Mm.
Exactly.
I really like that, and because with my recent understanding and sort of spiritual beliefs that everything is the all, like I said, it was sort of easy for me to just say, like, my individual identity, my individual ego and everything doesn't actually matter, because it's really, there's just the all happening.
Yeah.
But
and like both things can be true.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
No. It can be both simultaneously.
Because obviously every reaction had to have an action. So even me moving through this space right now is causing air to flow around me, is, air's going into my lungs and then coming back out. So I'm still interacting with the all, and therefore I really can't try to remove myself and say that I'm not, that I don't need to pay attention to my individuality. Because, so I guess what I was saying is I feel like I don't need to I need to sort of destroy my ego. I need to destroy my individuality because it was so minuscule that it didn't matter anyways.
Yeah.
But then what I feel like what you're saying is that, yeah, it's minuscule, but it's really all I have control over right now.
Yeah.
It's really all I can handle right now.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. Yes.
Yeah.
Because it is. It's the truth. Like, our experience really doesn't matter, but at the same time, it's the thing that matters most to us.
Yes.
You know?
And that has to have weight. That has to have matter. It really does. I have molecules. I have, things that are moving and interacting with my environment. So I can either say, man, it doesn't matter. Might as well just, kill myself and nothing will change, which it wouldn't. A lot of stuff which it would. A lot of things would change.
Yes.
My relationships or the people that I have relationships would change. I'd be missing from their relationships. But I don't know. I guess I might be talking in circles, but I just feel like remembering that I am a part of all that, and that my individuality and my ego is really all I have control over. So I might as well work to, nourish, check, and correct my ego and my individuality to embody my values, right?
Yeah. Working towards a goal. Having an aim and working towards that. And, I've been thinking a lot about, about how we're our own universe. You really, look into everything that composes of our body. It's crazy networks. Crazy networks. There's, so much existing,
right?
Inside of us that we'll never be able to understand. How that experience is. Because we're fixed in this embodiment of being a Homo sapien. And this is how we view the world.
Yeah.
But everything that's composed of us is living in a sense as well. It's just our brains aren't able to be encapsulated within the bacterium, so we don't understand how bacterium think. Because we're encapsulated in this Homo sapien experience.
That's so crazy.
But we needed all of that shit to even set up the stage for us to observe things like this. If we didn't have stomachs to process food on the go, if we didn't have if we weren't bipedal, our brains wouldn't be the same.
Yeah.
There's so we're like a fucking ancient walking organism right now. We're ancient as fuck, but we just pop out and we have this subjective interpretation of this experience for a very short period of time. However, when we die, or if we pass down our seed, we're still passing along all that has been to that next generation of human that lives and feels experience in a subjective short period of time. But it's weird. We're never unconnected from the all.
Yeah. And we really forget that and overlook it pretty often.
Yeah, and even if we die, we're still a part of it. Every cell that composes of our body will decompose. We'll get recycled, and we'll birth new life.
Yes. That's actually something that was I actually came to that realization when I was tripping on mushrooms one time. And it was really beautiful because I kind of saw that death was an illusion. It's really just the ceasing of this level of consciousness, but that all of the materials and matter that are making up this consciousness have to remain, right?
Yes.
And they'll just decompose and disperse back into the universe.
Yeah.
And it's so cool. And I think that's one of the reasons why mushrooms actually really helps people with end of life anxiety, is because they're able to see that. They're able to actually...
They're the things that decompose shit.
Yeah, dude. I love it. But I don't know, man. I think that's a really cool thought. But I think we as humans are in a pretty weird position to be completely composed of, I'd argue, infinite subjective experience, just to create a really, not at least on Earth, a novel experience of subjective experience. And then we evolve to the point where we were able to see how we're like ultimately insignificant, but also, does that make sense? We're in a weird state as human beings. We're gonna go this way.
Yeah.
Just by being, we've kind of transcended the same reactivity that most organisms on the planet are sort of trapped in, right? Because we're able to observe and experience so much more of our reality than other animals can.
Yes. And it's because we can reflect on past experience. It's because we can believe in fiction. We can account what has happened to us in the past, and we can account what's going to happen to us in the future. And like that story is the story of like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. That story is about the emergence of consciousness. And like when we became conscious, Adam now knows he's naked, right? And he's ashamed of that. And like that's because he's conscious of his nakedness. Whereas before he's just living in the garden, just like any other animal. Every other animal is just existing in the moment all the time. They don't think about what's going to happen at night. They don't think about what's going to happen in the next couple of days. They don't think about what happened to them 2 days ago. We do. And so we have to work for everything we do because we know that it's work. And we have to sacrifice things in the moment to achieve better things in the future. And it's through that, and it's only because we're conscious. It's only because we can see in the eyes of God. We can determine good things from evil things. And it's not even good things from evil things necessarily, but we know if we're like
in relation to us.
Yeah, exactly. If we're like beating up little kids in our tribe, people aren't going to want to have us around.
Yeah, they're going to kick us out.
Yeah, they're going to kick us the fuck out. And so, like, we can now see those things as being like, okay, this is not a good thing to do. Whereas, like, if a fucking black widow eats her husband, it's just for nutrients, man. It ain't nothing to do with anything.
That's what it is. And she's not going to get kicked out of a tribe that's not responsible, but integral to her survival.
Yeah, and so, like, we're weird. We're in a weird place as humans. It's like, because we know it's bad, and we willingly choose to cause those bad things to happen, which is like the worst possible thing we could do.
Yeah.
Like we cause suffering for the sake of suffering. And that's probably like the most evil shit you could ever think of.
Right? Because those who do that are so hurt that that's kind of the only way that they can derive pleasure or meaning and sort of maintain their own mental safety in a way.
And it's a good thing that you're reflecting on, like, those people are just hurt, because it's the truth. Yeah. So people are just like us, and we can get there too. We just choose not to.
Exactly. One of the things you said, though, is you said that how the Adam and Eve story is really the emergence of consciousness. I'd actually amend that to say that's the emergence of human consciousness.
Yes.
Because do you believe in the idea that really all there is consciousness? What that is like?
I agree with that. You're absolutely correct. Because like the way that trees communicate to like distribute shit between the forest, sacred geometry, the ability to like break down all nutritional matter, like that is consciousness.
And I'd even argue that what really is consciousness is just the simple experience of being. Yes. So that every level of reality is having some level of being, like even this rock. Yeah. So while this rock isn't exhibiting levels of human consciousness, it's still conscious in the sense that it has an inherent sense of being.
Like, you hear that? Mm-hmm. That means that this fucking inanimate object is reacting with nature to create sound waves. Mm-hmm. That has a resonance and like physical space in this reality. Yeah. So that is existing.
Exactly.
It's conscious in a sense. Mm-hmm. It's just not conscious in a sense that like it can perceive linear time.
Yeah.
In a
exactly. Because that's what human consciousness is sort of bound by is linear time. And I think that was something that really blew my mind was just the idea. I kind of heard the idea that consciousness is everything and that our human consciousness is really just a radio that's dialing into a very specific form of consciousness.
Yes, and I think that's what everything is specifically dialed into, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it has to be
Yeah.
for it to even be a thing.
Dude, isn't this cave super dope?
This is pretty freaking sick, dude.
That's crazy. Yeah, and it goes pretty far back. Yeah, I haven't seen how far down it goes. But kind of curious, actually. Usually I'm here on my own, so I'm too nervous to go down on my own.
Yeah, we can definitely go down there.
So look how far back these go in.
That is cool.
I can't even see where that is. How far back does that go?
I think it's caps right there. Dude, you want to do something weird?
Yeah.
You want to turn off the lights and talk for a second? Ooh.
But like, just to kind of bring it back to what we were talking about, that idea of everything being conscious is, I think, what allowed me to have such a significant experience on mushrooms one time, where there was a moment where I was literally like, my being, my identity was defined as the fold on a turtle's neck. I don't understand why. I don't understand how that happened, but I sort of inherently understood that there's a sense of being right there.
Yeah.
On that turtle's neck, that there's even there's just senses of being literally in everything. And then I kind of understood that as God. Just,
Ooh. Yeah, I like that you described like the hair on the back. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it was actually the fold of a turtle's neck is what it was. Yeah.
So like this one kid was describing, because he was going through like a spiritual awakening, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's mentioned this stuff on Reddit, and he was describing like how he felt that his spiritual awakening was just one part of a mass spiritual awakening, and he described his consciousness as a bacterium in the body. And so like bacterium will interact, and when you get a lot of like-minded bacterium, they interact, and they form groups or colonies, kind of like scobies, like symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast, right?
Yeah.
Those things form together and create something. And so like he was describing like his spiritual awakening as similar to that. At least that's what I understood. And so like it was interesting you were mentioning the fold on the turtle's neck, right? Like just being one part of a whole.
Yes.
And so like it's interesting because maybe we can't perceive big themes of experience subjectively, because like maybe that needs to be described between so like rise and fall of civilization, right? That's a bunch of individual consciousness interacting to this bigger thing that's above them. However, like the rise and fall of societies are just themes of maybe a bigger consciousness, right? So maybe the same way that bacterium in our gut collect and do things that we're not even aware of, right? But that happens. Like if you feed your body good food, like it will affect the way that you interact with the world. And so like what if all of our consciousness combined has an effect to the same way that like bacterium in our gut have an effect? Maybe we're just not able to perceive that level of consciousness because we're dialed in to this subjective interpretation of consciousness. And so like what if there's another version of us, like reflection of the all, that is tuned into those things and experiences those things?
So I love that because I think we are all individual like manifestations of some larger consciousness, and we just can't really see it or realize it. And so kind of what my spiel and what I've been all about for a little while now is how do we get our human species to align to a manifestation of consciousness that we actually all value and that we all really agree upon and can coordinate to create, because like we've obviously seen, as you described, with the rise and fall of civilizations, how certain culminations of consciousness can manifest something, like the fucking city of Rome.
Yes.
And so I think that one of the things that I've been obsessed with is how
how that even happens. And I think that happens through systems, and which is why I'm such a big, which is why I'm so against capitalism, because I think it's a system that does not align all of our consciousness into um, sort of a manifestation of being that is beneficial to all of us, or that we all actually value.
Yeah, and maybe that's the kick in the dick of life, right? Like maybe because like even though there's good bacterium in our gut, like there's beneficial bacteria like lactobacillus, all this like all these different kind of things that when bound together can create a healthy gut biome that helps you better interact with the world. However, you're in the midst of that, you're also dealing with a bunch of shitty gut bacteria, right? And so like you need to outweigh the negatives by resonating positive shit or incorporating good bacteria into your gut. And we've talked about emotion contagion before, and I think the only way to like meet like-minded individuals is to just go through the hero's journey yourself, understand what's valuable to like the greater consciousness, and then just try to show up to the plate on the daily to embody that frequency. And when you do that, just by you being yourself, we're mimicking creatures. And so like we'll mimic behavior. And so like I was noticing this when I was living in Oklahoma. The drivers in Oklahoma were much better than the drivers that are in this state.
That's what I
And so
better than here.
it's pretty intense, but you don't know that unless you get outside of that and see the contrast, right? But I was noticing that I was becoming a better driver living in other states because I was following and doing what I saw around the people around me. And so the only way to create change would be to just understand what's valuable and resonate that frequency. And people, like, not everyone will willingly choose to do that. Like, they're going to die before they even get the chance to like wrap their head around certain concepts. But I think that is why it's so important, because if we don't band together and do anything, then like everything's just chaos, right? And so like, that gives us a will to live. Like that gives us a will to live, to see change. And like the only reason we want to see change is because there's things that we want to see changed. You know what I'm saying? Like if we didn't have anything to like that we wanted to see change, we would never do anything. Because it would just be normal, right?
We would just stay in that.
And like, so that's like something I never understood about like heaven when I was a little kid, going to church. It was like, man, fuck, if it's good all the time and all you're doing is praying to God, that must really suck.
It's gotta get boring after a
it
while.
must get so boring. And so like, maybe the only way to experience excitement is to understand like the dangers of not doing something.
100%. Because I mean, I've heard Alan Watts talk about that, where he's like, let's imagine for a moment that the Christian view of the universe is correct, and you die and you're a good person, you go to heaven and you obtain the ability to, pretty much create your reality to the full manifestation of your heart's desire. And there's nothing ever surprising. You are always aware of what's going to happen, and you can just fill your life with pleasure because that's all you're really capable of, wanting. And then he's saying you could live that. You could live that for however long, but eventually your infinite self would be like, I need a surprise. I need something to curb this infinite knowledge so that I can feel experience, so that I can feel anything. Otherwise, I'm just numb. And so he's like, and that's what you are right now. You're simply a manifestation of that infinite knowledge, wanting to experience the unknowable, the unknown.
I 100% agree with that statement. I think that's like fucking so profound, and like that's exactly correct in my mind. Like that's what I like to choose to believe. And like even if it's not true, even if that's not true, because like we can't have all the answers. We can't say that we know all the answers. You know what I'm saying? But like if you can see patterns of behavior that you're like, I identify with that to like my whole being. Like that makes so much sense to me that I'm gonna strive to do that, because I see the most, like when I'm doing that and when I'm present, like my interactions on the day to day are so much better than like me not believing that thing. And so like 100%. Even if you believe in fake things, it like, cause there's like little like cautionary tales, right? About like fucking like even like the your palm being hairy from like masturbating, right? Like it's not real.
Yeah.
But like that belief and that thing might be a thing might cause some people to not be compulsive masturbators. Like who knows, right? Like not that example specifically, but it's the only one that like comes to mind of like it doesn't matter if it's real, but if you believe it to be real, it could serve you better in life.
Yes.
And so like even though Alan Watts may not have all the answers, believing what he believes gives me a deeper meaning in my life.
Yeah.
And so like that's all that matters, right? Like and if you're kind and you can interact with your environment, if you don't let your beliefs encroach in like on the beliefs of other people, I think that's totally fine.
Oh yeah, and I feel like everybody can get behind that.
I think so too.
Because as long as you're not trying to attack someone with your beliefs, then you're not harming them, right?
Yes.
That's just basic. That's just what it is. Actually, what I love about you saying that is something that I've kind of like shifted. If I ever want to have like a conversation with someone about religion or spirituality or beliefs, instead of being like, so what do you believe in? And sort of forcing them to go, oh shit, I got to get attacked. I say, what do you want to believe in?
Ooh,
yeah, like
I like that.
What do you want the afterlife to be like?
Yeah.
How can you align yourself to try and, meet that afterlife that you truly want? And I've noticed that people are usually more open to discussion when you say that, because they're like, oh, well, actually, this is kind of what I want. It's like, oh, that's cool. I can see why you'd want that,
Yeah.
And I think that also reframes it for them instead of having to subscribe to their dogmatic beliefs that they were raised on, if they had them, then they're able to say like, oh, what do I want to believe? And they sort of allow themselves to have that choice instead of being like, nope, this is the way the universe is because that's what I was told, so I have to believe in that, otherwise I'm just wrong.
Yeah, I really like that question. I think I'm going to use that. That's like a fucking genius, dude. I really like, because when you present information in that way, you're doing it through a method of wanting to cooperate. Like you're not saying, what do you believe in? It being like, whatever your belief is, I have a belief too, and now we have to compete. We have to spar those beliefs. And like humans, we're very cooperative, but we don't want to be told what to do. And so like when we feel the need to defend ourselves, it doesn't enable us to have open lines of communication, because now it's a completely different game. Now you're defending your beliefs. Whereas when you mentioned, what would you like to believe in? You're not needing to defend shit. You're just abstractly thinking about good.
It's like, well, I think this would be kind of nice if this was true.
Yes.
It's kind of odd to think, how much cooperation are we missing out on based off the questions that we ask people? Like we think of like the current political climate. Like how do we phrase things? We're not phrasing them in ways that allow open lines of communication. What we're doing is we're forcing people to defend themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
I hate to bring it back around, but I argue that that's because of capitalism, and because capitalism is sort of seated on a competitive mindset, rather than a mindset of cooperation. I think there's cooperation within capitalism in order to attain competition.
Yes.
But it's not the prevailing idea. It's not the dominating idea.
I think that you're absolutely correct. And so like, I think that, so I try to value capitalism for what it is, because it was an emergence of consciousness that served a very specific function.
Yeah.
It unified the globe. Like, and so like, just that alone is so cool that was the idea that moved people forward into exploring unknown territory.
Oh yeah.
However, now the globe is unified. We no longer need to use this idea to go into the unknown.
Okay.
We use it as like a value, like idea. And I think that with current technology, like the internet, especially blockchain technology specifically and automation, I think that we need to now use new technologies to go into a deeper unknown. Because what's going to be really unknown is when 30% of all jobs are going to be lost in the United States in 10 years, 2030, when everything is automated, like,
or impending ecological disaster.
Yeah. Is currency going to be that thing that we use to delve into the unknown? No, it's not. But what is like automation, science.
Like
I really like that you acknowledge that, because I remember because you blew my mind when we were talking that one time, and you're like, I get what you're saying, but like, the bottom, like capitalism, I can value it for what it is because it unified the globe, and I had never thought of it like that. I was like, oh wow, it is, because I've been framed to think of it as dominating the globe, and I think it is now, or I think it's really it's no longer useful to us. It's not actually unifying us anymore. I think it's pulling us apart. And I think, like you said, for one thing, when 30% of the population is jobless, how is it going to sustain itself? How's it going to function? A lot of people actually describe what we're dealing with now as late stage capitalism, because it's sort of reaching a natural end where either we kill the planet or it just has to die off because not enough people can buy into it anymore.
Yeah. And like, I like that we were mentioning it being a tool.
Mm-hmm.
Like every single thing is a tool.
Yeah.
So when we look at shit, we look at it for what it functions as.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we look at a chair, we don't just see the chair as being a wooden object with a flat base and fucking four legs. We look at that chair and be like, that's something I sit on.
Yeah.
Like, we as humans use tools to engage with unknown territory or within known territory. It's nice to have seats. It's nice to not sit on the ground and get bit by scorpions and shit. You know?
Exactly.
Like, it's nice to have these things. And so I like that we were mentioning that, like, capitalism is just a tool to delve into the unknown, and everything is a tool to delve into the unknown, even what you believe, right? Like, your beliefs delving into unknown territory matter.
Yeah.
Like, because those beliefs are tools.
Mm-hmm.
Those beliefs are tools that you use to engage with unknown things. And so, like, maybe everything is that. Everything is a tool to interact with the unknown. Mm-hmm. And so, like, capitalism was that tool for us. Now, however, we definitely need to find different tools,
build a new tool
to go into the unknown, because the tools that served us in the past aren't necessarily going to be the tools that serve us in the future, right? Like, we're not all communicating with radios.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really good tool to enable communication. However, we streamlined it to a point where we communicate a little bit differently now. Mm-hmm. And so, like, a radio is not going to be as effective talking to someone on the opposite end of the globe in real time.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so, like, yeah, we need to value we need to know the past, because we need to know what value we need to bring from the past to continue to engage with the unknown. But then we also do need to know that, like, everything is in constant movement. Everything is constantly changing, and stagnation leads to death. And you were mentioning that, like, we're at the late stage of capitalism, right? Like, maybe capitalism, maybe it is stagnant now. Mm-hmm. It's not serving us the function that it did 100 years ago.
100%.
Yeah. And so, like, to really, like, understand what we have in our tool belts, and, like, what we can best use to engage with unknown territory would probably be really good. Like, you need to know why you have the things that you do. So important.
I like that because that's actually one of the things that you did for me that one conversation is kind of, I kept seeing capitalism as not like a tool that's being used and is, like, now outdated or maligned. I kept seeing it as, like, a cancer that I was forced to interface with.
Yeah.
But you sort of reframed it for me, and so I was like, okay, I have to, maybe it's a tool that I despise or a tool that I think is broken, but it's also all I have right now.
Yeah.
So I have to at least use it to try and imagine new systems, trying to imagine and create new tools.
Yes.
And that's, I think it was really enabling for me, because, like, that was really just stagnating me. I was like, I have to find a way to not use this tool of capitalism, because I see it as inherently maligned and, like, hurting people.
Yeah. And you can see that too.
Yeah, you can.
Like, that exists. Mm-hmm. That's just as real as it also being used as a tool.
Yeah.
Like, because, like, through subjective experience, like, you're living paycheck to paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
That's not fun.
Yeah.
Like, you're working for people that have different distribution of resources that are, like, way above you, and it seems like you have to fall slave to a system where you never see progress. That's the biggest thing, is, like, you don't see progress, and progress isn't based off of your effort. Mm-hmm. That's what's also really debilitating too, is, like, you could be the best fucking worker and you could fucking crush it, but, like, the person above you is just meeting a checklist. Mm-hmm. He fucking hates his job just as much as you do, you know? Yeah. And, like, because you do work, it's easier for him to fill a box than it is for him to do the work. You know what I'm saying? And so
dude.
I think it's both. I think it's both things.
And it definitely is. I think it's becoming more unbalanced towards, harm. But again, it's really the only tool I have right now.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, because I know I listen to a lot of Russell Brand, and one of the things he always talks about is that we sort of have to design a new tool or a new system, and then sort of engage with it adjacent to capitalism.
Yeah.
And then just kind of, because it's its own machine, it's its own organism in a sense. Because as soon as we stop buying into it, it's just going to die.
Yeah. That's a weird thing too.
It is weird. All right, let's do this. I haven't checked this out at all, so I'm kind of curious. Oh. Yeah, it stops right back there. That's so wild.
What a cool cave, man.
I know, right?
Like, it's crazy to think how many of these things are out there.
I know. Actually, there's a website that I've checked out a couple times. It's just got like all of the little caves and tunnels and stuff in Utah.
Yeah.
And yeah, this was one of them.
Heck yeah. That's cool. Good for people for doing that.
I know, right?
Giving us little candles to see the light. Fucking where caves are and shit.
It is pretty cool to.
Dude, thanks for sitting with me in the dark. That was really nice.
Yeah, man. It's a lot easier when I'm not alone.
Yeah.
It gets eerily quiet in there.
Yeah, that was cool. Somebody sent me this little thing of like people releasing endogenous DMT or some shit.
Endogenous?
Like apparently there's like DMT in our systems.
Yeah. Like in our brains and in a lot of plant matter and stuff like that.
And this dude was mentioning if you just go sit in the fucking dark for a long time, that you can like experience certain spiritual states.
Yeah, sort of like a sensory deprivation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was nice. It was like me first developing a relationship with that.
That's cool.
But also it's easier to just like pay attention to the words being spoken.
Yeah.
You don't need to focus on very much.
Don't have to worry about slipping and falling or anything.
Yeah, when you're
That's nuts.
we have to process all this information, all the trees around us. It's not like conscious, but I think it does take up
Takes up brain power.
it takes up brain power because you need to process
RAM.
it. I think that's why it's so relaxing to look at an ocean or the sky.
Oh yeah, dude.
It's like there's not much to process. But like when you're out in nature too, though, it's like you kind of get the same feeling, even though there is a lot to process.
Yeah.
And I think it's because like this has meaning. This is alive. It's conscious. Whereas like the man-made tools that we have, they're still conscious in a sense, but it's just different. They're not living in the same way.
It's not. It's not working to sustain itself. It's just being.
Yeah. And so like looking at a dirty ass house, even though it's maybe like the same amount of things to process, instead of like looking at a forest, it feels different.
But also, one of the things that, woohoo! Oh dear. One of the things Russell Brand talks about a lot is that we're not living this sort of modern living that we have. We're not living in the conditions that we're evolved for, because our brains and our biology is really still evolved for living in nature, and I think that's why it can calm us down so much.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess maybe I'm speaking subjectively, because there's definitely people in our society who will go out in nature and they are anxious the entire time, and it's not calming for them. But like we really weren't meant to be, or we weren't evolved for living in massive cities of hundreds of thousands of people, all cramped and cooped up into small spaces and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, we're pretty lucky here in Utah to have outdoors that we have a connection and a relationship with.
Yeah.
Because I know that, like, people out in New York, it's like, yeah, it would take me like a couple hours drive in order to go on an actual hike. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm walking in a concrete jungle. And like, I don't know, whenever I'm in like a city or something, I really just do feel a disconnection from my true self.
Yeah, I can see that. Like, I like to think of it as both things. Because like, we could say that like capitalism and like the internet and like cities are like against nature. However, they're a part of nature, right? Like we evolved in this system and we ended up using those things as tools to get us to where we wanted to be.
I think you're right, because they have to essentially be a part of nature since
It exists.
it exists.
Yeah.
But I'm worried that these tools were actually designed to try and dominate what we understand as nature.
I agree with you.
And I think that's why we're having such ecological disaster where we're killing the planet. And we're honestly harming ourselves. I mean, just think about like just like the food we eat, and sort of the way our social interaction has really mutated into, a screen. And I think that I just kind of back to it is I really think that those systems and those tools were designed to dominate nature. And it makes sense because when we were evolving, we had to survive in nature, and it was terrifying. It was dangerous.
Yes.
So we had to develop tools that would protect us from it, and then we've developed tools to control and dominate it, and it worked for a long time, and it helped us grow, and really, it really did provide like an increased standard of living. We were able to get this technology. We're able to walk out in the woods right now without being afraid of if we're going to have something to eat, if we're going to have shelter, all that stuff. So I do see needing to value capitalism and these systems for what they are, but we also have to value them for what they're doing to the world now and what they will do. Yeah, it really is.
Correction for what you're saying, because like it's true. Like we were existing in a crazy, scary world. It was an overcorrection because now we're like lousing up resources to the point where we're literally destroying our planet, and like everything is trying to maintain balance. And so the systems we have in place currently are not going to allow us to do that over a long period of time without just completely fucking the planet.
Yeah.
And ourselves in the process. Like we're a part of it. We can't screw the things we get resources from.
That's it, like honestly, once like we have this cultural mindset and as a species we understand that, I think the next step is going to have to be where we create a system where we are completely conscious of our ecological impact so that we can grow and be shit, dude, I don't know. I really think that our new systems are going to incorporate a more global consciousness where it's not about extracting resources and using them for our own benefit, but we just stop. I think we'll change our priorities as a species. For one thing, I think we'll have to care more about the planet and our impact on the planet. And then for another thing, I think we're going to learn to prioritize new things in our individual lives. Rather than seeking to extract profit out of every situation, maybe we'll seek to extract fulfillment out of every situation.
Yeah. I really like that. So there's this dude, Jacques Fresco. He was this futurist. He ended up passing away a couple years ago, but his one of his mates are like still holding the candle to his idea. But like he wants to go to a resource-based economy, which is the only economy that actually makes sense, man. Like we're thinking about like we're going to interact with our environments and not just try to extract this idea of money.
Yeah.
But we're like extracting resources for like different purposes.
Yeah.
Maybe, and so like his idea of a society was anything that enhances the state of man and just enhances the state of, mostly it enhances the state of man. But by enhancing the state of man, you're also enhancing the state of everything around you.
Or at least you can't sustainably enhance the state of man without sustaining everything.
So like if you didn't have good resources in nature, so like if nature was not biodiverse, that would mean that it wouldn't have it would have a terribly weak immune system. And so like most of the shit that we find that keeps us alive are found in these fucking forests, where like shit's just so diverse. And so like his idea was to make like these little circular cities. You never had to backtrack, so you're always like using resources in the most effective way. So like cities, like you have to backpack. You go to your house, you go to your work or your school, and then you have to backtrack back to your house. Whereas like his cities are all circular. You live in here, but bam, 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 like you go back to your house.
Interesting.
But I like his idea of a resource-based economy because it's the only economy that makes sense.
It really is.
Like money is just a tool. It's just an idea in our head that we use to create change in reality. However, like you don't need money to build a building. You need materials to build the building. Yeah, you know, exactly. Like
That's interesting.
and so I like that description because it forces people to understand because then it's limited.
Yes, it is.
Resources are finite.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're interacting with this world thinking that money is the resource to get shit, you're not seeing the full picture. Money is just a tool that you use to redistribute resources. However, the only thing that actually exists is resources.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That makes so much more sense because we sort of, like you said, when this reframing where we see money as the resource, it sort of allowed us to create systems that see money as infinite and then think that there are infinite resources.
Yes.
Because our system really is built up to extract as much money as possible, which is not possible in the long run. It's not sustainable because the resources that money is actually completely reliant and dependent upon is finite.
Yeah.
That's wild, dude. I think that's a really good way to reframe it. And I think I've never heard of the resource-based economy, but that makes so much sense. And I think it's so obvious. Like why?
Yeah, right. It's like right in front of our face. It's like, how do we not know this?
I'd argue that it's because those that are in power who have really established and elevated levels in our society because of money have to sort of seek to maintain that. Yeah. Otherwise they'd be looking at their life and going, man, I'm fucking up the planet. I gotta change something. And then something would be changed because they really hold they've just got this concentrated level of power.
And like just like a hyper focused view of consciousness.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like because they're so dialed into their subjective experience and like using resources around them to like they derive meaning from that. Mm-hmm. And it's a weird place to be when you're hyper focused on yourself. You start to see stagnation around you in other ways.
Yeah.
Like in personal development and relationships, fucking like everything. Like, so you need to be connected to a part of the whole to still have things work symbiotically around you.
Yeah.
Because if not, like you're just causing like, I don't know, fucking like mayhem to like other people's lives, like chaos. Like I'm thinking of like Epstein and shit. Like it's crazy. You cool if I speak on some schizo shit for a second?
Oh yeah, dude. What do you mean by schizo shit?
Like just like weird thoughts that like get me pretty paranoid. Anyways, so higher consciousness, right? You kind of felt it in a sense. Like when you interact with certain things, you have these epiphanies. You start to see things as being a part of a whole. Like you get like this like spiritual type of insight that doesn't come from you, but you're experiencing it, right?
Yeah.
And like it's perceived in some ways of like a higher state of consciousness giving me direction.
Yeah.
And so if there has to be duality for things to exist, there has to be the opposite end of that. If you're getting spiritual insights, there has to be opposites. Which would be parasites. And so like, Don Miguel Ruiz talks about that in his book. It's called The Parasite of the Mind. And so like we can spread emotional poison to people. You can be like, you know, Nathan, you're dumb as fuck. You're going to agree that you're dumb as fuck because I told you this. And then like, now you're thinking, oh, well, I agree with that. I am dumb. You're right. And then you start to feed this idea that you're dumb.
Yeah.
That idea doesn't serve you.
It doesn't.
That idea serves something else. And so like, there's this one video that apparently like biophotonic energy, it's light. And like light, so if you're to like look at us through an infrared, we give off light. Like we are light. We're fucking starlight. Like it's a thing. We're energy, exactly. And so like apparently there's this mode of communication between the cells that function off light, which is weird as shit. And it's called biophotonic energy.
Oh my God, dude, I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
When you're stressed, in states of stress, you release this energy, this biophotonic energy. And you can either use that energy to help yourself, or you can use it to feed the negative thoughts in your head.
Some other source.
Exactly. So like, for example, if you lose your job, right? You'd be like, oh, fuck, this is a stressful situation. I hate myself. I'm obviously incompetent because I couldn't hold this job.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a piece of shit. Like, I don't know when I'm ever going to get an opportunity to do this again. And so, like, I'm at a complete deficit right now. I'm going to devalue the situation because I'd rather use anger right now as a stimulant to make me feel less shitty about myself in the moment.
Yeah.
I'm just going to feed these negative thoughts in my head because I feel that it's serving me well in the moment. However, those are the things that weigh you down. Like, you can't interact with life and say that you're one thing and not lose the will to live. If you think that you're like unlovable, stupid as shit, and if like this is what you're telling yourself, you're feeding these ideas or parasites in your mind because these ideas don't serve you.
That's so
They're
wild.
so counterproductive. And like, so it's mentioning in states of stress, you can use this energy to help yourself or feed the parasite. And so like, you can use that energy to be like, oh shit, what opportunities did I not see that I now see that this experience has happened now that I lost my job? Like, what opportunities are there for me to change my situation for the better on this planet? Because we only get one chance.
Yeah.
And so you can either dwell and like feed terrible ideas in your head, or you can take action, take accountability, and change your life for the better. And so it's fucking weird, man. So he thinks that when you have this energy, when you're stressed, you release this energy, you can either use it for yourself or you use that energy to feed the parasite. And so like, our system is designed for those negative thoughts to constantly be fed.
Yeah.
The way that we describe, like the way that we were talking about in the cave, the way that we ask questions, the way that we like work in systems, the way that we align our circadian rhythm to mindlessly work at a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
And the people in power are profiting off of that infinite energy that people are just
That interaction.
Yeah, so you see like Epstein making have like these fucking altars, shrines, where they're doing like fucking sacrificial blood magic type shit. And so like, what if these people tapped into like this algorithm, this function of being like, if I do this, it'll serve me well now. But I have to continue putting people in these states of stress. And like Epstein was like getting new girls all the time. Like he was cultivating that energy like hardcore.
Yeah.
And with that single-minded use of like, I'm the only thing that exists, like it allows you to create destruction around you. And so like as above, so below, if we get spiritual insights, what if there's other things that are not are just looking out for themselves?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's interesting. I'm wondering, when you're saying that though, I'm wondering what exactly that parasite is. What is it that's actually gaining nourishment from negative thought patterns?
Yeah.
What is it?
Maybe this is something outside of our realm. We were talking about where does idea space, where does that exist?
That's
Right?
Yeah.
So like if we're having these ideas, that doesn't exist in this physical space.
Yeah.
So like, but it exists in a
It's still
space.
being drawn from somewhere. And it can still be extracted from somewhere.
And it can still be an experience.
Yeah.
Like even though it can't be measured from our current understanding of what the tools that we use to measure shit with. And like, I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird thought. Like I think about it sometimes.
Because there really is something feeding off of that. And like, putting it simply would be like just our negativity bias.
Yes.
But like, even that isn't sufficient enough to say like, because the negativity of bias in itself was evolved for our benefit. It was evolved to protect us. So if we really say that is being nourished by actually harming ourselves, that doesn't seem accurate to me. Unless it's just like an outdated trait.
I agree with you. It's like an overcorrection, right?
Yeah.
Like you should be worried about things that could eat you in the forest, but you shouldn't be worried about how how you feel. Like,
Yeah.
and our brains don't have processing power to reflect on how we feel. And we're the only creatures that can willingly choose to put ourselves in states of stress for long periods of time. And we know, like, biologically, you can't do that.
You really can't.
You can't have, no animal can be in a heightened state of stress for a long period of time and not harm themselves. And so I think that you're onto something with that thing of like, when it's not simply just negative bias. Like, this thing it's deeper than that. It's like, it's a different, and yeah, because it is so different. Because like being scared about like falling into a river or like reflecting on how shitty everything is around you are two completely different thoughts.
Exactly.
You know?
One, I mean, thinking about how everything is shitty around you isn't protecting you from anything.
No.
So
It's harming you.
that's what's so interesting about that parasite analogy, because like, what is it that's feeding off of that?
Yeah.
And like, I don't know. I feel like it's just that abstract depression or anxiety that's really feeding off of that. And it's so sad to see how many people are unawakened to that understanding, to that realization, because they're living in hell. They're just living in those painful thought patterns that something is feeding off of, something within them.
And it's weird too, like, you think about like rise and fall of societies, right? We're talking about like Rome, and like, so I don't really know much about it, and I should be looking more into it.
Me neither. So whatever you say will be truth to me.
I understand that there's certain themes that you can see in civilization when they incorporate these themes.
Mm-hmm.
Like civilization starts to go downhill.
Yeah.
When you start to focus on being entertained rather than interacting with things and providing value to shit, that's when shit starts to fall. Like Rome, they were like having gladiator games, right? That was their version of disassociation or entertainment. They started like promoting in like chefs, famous chefs, and artists. Like, that was the thing. Look at here. Look at all this shit that we're doing. Yeah. So cool. However, when you divert people's attention, they're not able to see everything that's actually going on.
Yes.
That's when you go to a magic show. People are just diverting your attention.
Yep.
Everything is existing. It's systematic,
and
it's just directing your attention to certain things so that you can then do something to provide a certain illusion, right?
As a form of entertainment.
Yeah. And so,
and distraction.
Maybe that's what we do. The greater consciousness, right? Like this mass consciousness, maybe that's what it does.
Dude.
It starts to distract itself by starting to reflect on the good things about itself.
Yeah.
And when it starts to reflect on the good things about itself, it's no longer working. And it stagnates. And then it dies.
Interesting.
You know?
Because
so,
if its purpose was to elevate those good things, and then it just starts to sit and reflect on those good things, then it has no way of actually growing.
Yes. And so, like, think about what is happening currently in the United States. Entertainment, gallivanting chefs around. We're talking about how good things, we're reflecting on the good aspects of what we are without bringing in new ideas of value.
Yeah.
And so, like, this is the longest lasting Constitution, man. I think we might see some crazy shit in our life.
Oh, 100%.
And I think right now, it is the time to start taking action. And so the best thing that we could possibly do is doing what we're doing right now.
Oh, I love that.
Being able to communicate, putting that online, showing people different modes of pattern recognition. And if they vibe with that, they do. If they don't, they don't. And that's okay.
Yeah.
However, all we can do is ourselves. The only thing that we have control over is what we personally do. And when you live under a value framework, you start to see better results in your life over multiple relationships, and it serves you well. And so, like, all we can do is embody that and show other people those things. Because, like, maybe some people don't even have those thoughts of, like, being on their radar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're not even picking those up. And so, like, just
they're in such a reactive state.
Being an example, you can help tune people into different modes of consciousness.
I agree. I think I really I liked what you said about just kind of like this sort of obsession with entertainment and distraction, because I think people don't realize that
our culture has really forced them into that, where it's just avoid pain, seek distraction, seek this like soothing of entertainment and stuff, so that they don't really have to understand what they truly value in their lives. They don't have to work to find out what they value and how to bring those values, or to manifest those values, because pretty much all they have to do is avoid pain, seek pleasure, and that sort of externalizes everything for them and binds them, I think. And I like what we're doing here. I think if I seek every day to just kind of help someone gain a little more autonomy, even if it's just from the incessant nagging of their hurtful mind, like that's a win for me. And I think and where my spiel will always end up is I think our system should emulate that. I think our system should seek to help people awaken and help people find autonomy rather than imprisoning them in a cycle of avoiding pain, seeking pleasure.
Yeah. It's so true. Yes. And like, luckily there's like, if we just understood the power that we have, we could change the system.
Yeah.
If we
100%.
willingly like looked into the laws
Mm-hmm.
and like actually gave a shit
Yeah.
about what was going on,
Exactly.
and if we approached it from manners of abstract thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and also a fact of cooperation.
Oh yeah.
Like if you're a Democrat and you can't talk to a Republican, you're a fucking idiot.
100%.
If you're a Republican and you can't
100%.
talk to a Democrat, you're a fucking idiot.
Oh, 100%.
Like people don't
100%.
understand that like you can't play on teams and be tribal when you're all part of one team.
Oh, that's the
We're all part of a team. Like we need to understand that like I honestly believe that most people, they fall in line somewhere in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I think most people are conscious and they see what's happening on both ends.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel right.
I agree.
Like, with how radical people are on like certain sides, like it doesn't feel right to me. And so like it's perfect ammunition
Mm-hmm.
for people on the opposite end, being blue team, being red team,
Mm-hmm.
to then use that to fight the other side.
Yeah.
Where it has nothing to do with that. Like people don't understand that like if people were really that fucked up,
Mm-hmm.
there'd be a lot more fucked up shit happening in our world.
All the time.
All the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like that must mean that people are generally good.
Yeah.
Generally good and willing to cooperate.
I agree. Because a lot of times when I sort of like talk to people about the state of the world and like the systems that we have right now, and I'm like wondering why is there so much tribalism and inward fighting? And it's like, oh, that's just natural. And it's like, well, yeah, but so is our ability to cooperate and our ability to love. So when are we going to nourish? What aspects of ourselves do we want to nourish, and what do we want to see from each other? And I totally agree with that, because really whenever like really radical crazy shit happens, it's because there was this microcosm just like festering and bubbling, and if they just had some sort of love, if they had some sort of interaction and connection with someone that's thinking differently from them, it would just fizzle out. Because I think the deeper aspects of their nature for cooperation and love would would just override. You know, as humans, we're such social creatures. I think that is such an important aspect of ourselves that can be nourished and catered to.
Yeah.
Rather than saying something and getting hurt by it and then just wanting to be divisive and no longer cooperative.
I agree with that. And like you were also talking about like tribalism, right? Like,
yeah.
Team red, team blue, and they're like, oh, this is just human nature. Like this is what happens, bro.
Yeah.
But we need to understand that like everything that we do, even the tools that we have, it's just based off. They're just useful to us in the moment, so that we can engage with our environment for the best possible outcome in this short linear experience.
Yep.
And if we understood that being tribal was a tool that we had to use to exist in this space.
Mm-hmm.
And in the midst of that, so like our brain, we were tribal creatures before our brain tripled.
Mm-hmm.
Before the belief in fictitious ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And so like tribalism was a tool for us to just exist in this space with other living things. Because not every single Homo sapien could band together.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they had to be in tribes.
Our brain couldn't handle it, for one thing.
And so, like, we're still getting biological signals
Mm-hmm.
from other people being like, they're not part of our tribe.
Yeah.
Like, so, like, they're the opposites. They're the
Mhm.
outcasts. Like,
Yeah.
they're
They're the
different
enemy.
than we are.
Mm-hmm.
They are the enemy, and you had to think that way in certain situations in the past. Or you need to at least be aware that could be a potential danger
Yeah,
to
exactly.
interact with. Because, like, if you were just ignorant to that, there could be a lot of bad things that happen to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is crazy. And so, like, it's weird to think that, like, tribalism was a tool that we used to just exist.
Yes.
But now we can believe in fiction.
We have the tools to transcend that.
We have the tools to transcend that like, mind state. And so, like, it would be nice if we could all look around us. We're all using, like, the same technology.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we all, like, it would just be nice to know that we're just all a part of Team Planet Earth.
Right?
We're all part of this. Like, if we just had that be our guide, being like, dude, everyone is the fucking same. It doesn't matter what your pigment of your skin is. Look at our biology. We're 99.9% the fucking same.
Yeah. And it's like, if the bottom line is, the only reason you see me as an other and hate me is because you fear for your existence and want to exist, and then you just realize, hey, I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I'm also fearing for my existence and want to maintain my existence.
Yes.
Then we can actually establish cooperation.
Yes.
That's
When you
like all it is.
alienate people and you put them in boxes,
Mhm.
you forcibly put them in situations where you're not allowing cooperation.
Yeah, exactly, because you won't cooperate with
You
them.
won't. You're just like, nope. Like, oh, you're a Trump supporter? Fuck you. I'm not listening to you. I'm dismissing everything you said.
Oh,
like, you do
that
not
kills me.
understand the dangers of what you're doing.
Yeah.
You don't understand the dangers of what you're doing. What if Trump was the next Hitler? Say he started putting people in internment camps.
Mhm.
Like, fucking started doing crazy stuff. And, like, what then to that Trump supporter? The Trump supporters obviously don't, like, people are just people. They don't want to see people, like, be, like we've seen genocide in history, and we're not about that. Like, I would say it's probably safe to assume, it's definitely safe to assume that the majority of the population believe that.
Yeah, otherwise we'd be having holocausts.
And, like, the people that do believe those kind of things, like, those people are just crazy, hurt people, and they need to, like, sort themselves out.
Yeah,
And
we need to cultivate an environment and a culture that will heal them.
Yeah, and we need to create a culture and environment that makes us strong.
Yeah.
Like, you should not be afraid of other people's ideas.
No.
Like,
yeah.
you should be grateful that there's flat earthers out there, bro, because they give you the contrast in life to be like, yeah, man, what I believe is true, and
Yeah.
like my belief is a strong belief, and it's a belief that exists.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's good that people have terrible ideas. We shouldn't censor people ever.
I agree.
But what we should do is we should give people the tools that they need to see deception, to see where thought patterns that are not going to serve you well over long periods of time. Because, like, if we're not teaching ourselves these tools, we're not teaching ourselves to, like, look out for certain things that could potentially be dangerous. We're doomed to repeat ourselves in history.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy.
I love that. You know, Joe Rogan always says, he's like, the only way to combat bad speech is with good speech.
Yes.
Don't censor people, because that's just going to put them into a place where they can let that bad speech fester and cause these microcosms of, you know, bad thoughts or ideas that are culminating into something very dangerous.
Yeah.
Instead, if we, like you said, helping people understand deception, helping people understand thought patterns that don't serve them. Like, someone who's a flat earther and is like will die on the hill that the earth is flat, what is that belief really doing for them? Is it actually helping them lead a fulfilling life? Or are they sort of clinging to it because they have to believe that they're this arbiter of truth, and that it's their duty to relay this truth to everybody? Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And I think that, like, people are just simple biological computers, and we want to know what's known.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you're in an environment where things are flat as fuck, that's your whole existence.
Yep.
Everyone around you has experienced those same things because they don't want to move out of the state because it's scary, unknown territory.
Yep.
And you're influenced by these people, and they're saying these things. And like,
you just want things to be known to you so you don't feel so afraid,
Yeah.
right? And so,
100%.
it makes sense why you just subscribe to an idea because you just want it to be known. Because once
Mm-hmm.
it's known, then you've solved it, right?
Yeah.
But you have the answers, like it's
Mm-hmm.
known.
Yeah.
But people don't understand that nothing's known.
Yeah.
Nothing's truly known.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we can observe things, and there's, like, scientific laws, and there's, like...
And we can have agreements.
Yeah, exactly. But, like, nothing is, like, truly, truly known. Like,
Mm-hmm.
just, because everything is known through symbols.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that's really known is just standing here.
Mm-hmm. This
Hearing
experience.
that water, feeling this experience, looking at the clouds. Like, this is known.
Mm-hmm.
This is the only thing that's, like, really exists.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else exists in a different space. Maybe not the physical space that we can
Mm-hmm.
observe. It exists, though.
Of symbols and ideas.
But they exist in symbols. And so, like, that tree that we call a tree is going to be a different name in a different language.
Yeah. It's not inherently a tree. It's inherently something different.
Yeah, it's inherently that thing.
Oh.
We identify with as a tree so
Mhm.
that we can make it known in our experience.
Yeah, dude. I think Terrence McKenna will talk about like ideology, and I think it ties into that aspect of having to have something that is known. And he says that we should abandon ideology because the problem with ideology is that it's sort of this overarching like knowledge that you all of a sudden have to subscribe all of your experience to,
Yeah.
rather than allowing yourself to take in new information and learn something new.
And then that becomes fixed.
Yeah, it
That
does.
ideology becomes
It's
fixed.
stagnant. Yeah.
That's weird. I
Yeah.
like that.
He says I don't even know why they issued a brain if you have an ideology, because apparently everything's known already. Why are you even trying to learn? Because obviously you know everything. So just hunky dory, be on your way. So I think that's something that we really have to do as a society, because I think that's one of the things we need to not be afraid of beliefs, because our beliefs can change.
Yeah.
And so I think if we allow and afford that to other people, instead of saying like, your ideas aren't going to change, so I'm not even going to bother, I'm just going to alienate you and silence you and hope that you go away.
Yeah, bro. People didn't think the internet exists. But what the fuck are you talking to me? What are you like typing in on your keyboard angrily at me because I have this idea? Like,
Yeah.
dude, people didn't think the internet was going to be a thing.
Yeah.
And yet it's earth shattering, and every single person on the planet uses it pretty much.
Yeah, dude.
Like, not every single person.
Yeah, but it's
most, you know what I'm saying?
It's massive.
It was disruptive to a point where like people couldn't even comprehend it.
Mm-hmm.
And like that change is happening like right now too, with like blockchain technology, like automation. Like people are like, oh yeah, that shit's never gonna work. And like, dude, you are so trapped in the way that you think right now that like it's crazy. Like, do you not understand that even money was just an idea that people used to like receive certain things? We used to trade stones.
Yeah, dude.
Like there was I think there was a story about like these ships that they carried these huge boulders, and these boulders had worth. Like a big boulder was worth a certain amount.
It was just a big rock.
It was just a big rock. Because like it doesn't matter what it is. It can be paper money or a big fucking boulder, bro. Like
it's all the agreement that we have.
It's an agreement that we're like, this has value, and we're all going to agree that this has value, and like that's what it is. And so like these ships carrying these big boulders ended up like sinking in the ocean, but they could account how many boulders were on that ship, and then they still use that as currency. Because they're like, yo, bro, like, there is boulders in this ocean. Like, I don't even need to know that there's boulders, but I know that these boulders are on my ship, and I know that that's what I have value over. And, like, you've agreed that these boulders have value.
So you need to reimburse me for that value with something that actually is valuable.
Exactly.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's weird. It's odd that, like, we exist in a space where, like, we're constantly interacting with symbols and physical reality. And, like, we have to incorporate all of that into our interpretation of experience here.
Damn, dude.
Which is weird.
That is weird.
Yeah.
I was really blown away the first time that I heard an idea of like, yeah, did you know that there could be societies without money? It's like, what? How? It's impossible. But it's like, oh wait, money isn't like even real.
Yeah.
The value we ascribe to it is completely arbitrary.
Yeah.
And it just blew my mind. It's like,
and like you don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. So like you're never given an opportunity to see contrast in things, or like to see contrast in ideas. Like everything is fixed
Mhm.
because it's not.
Damn, dude.